Early videos this week, Dolphins fans, as we've got the Black Friday game on the road against the New York Jets for Week 12 in the NFL. This is the first of two preview and prediction videos that we will be doing for this matchup. Today, we're talking top matchups, keys to victory. But before we get into any of that, I gotta hear from you, because for that final preview and prediction video, I want to answer a viewer question. So anything you've got related to the Dolphins, related to the game, go ahead, drop them into the comments. We'll get to as many of them as possible. Let's kick things off, because on actually Monday of this week, the Jets had some news. I don't think a lot of us wanted this news. I think the Dolphins and us as fans wanted the opportunity to go up against Zach Wilson, especially with how this defense has been playing. But the Jets did announce, they did make it official. It'll be Tim Boyle starting under center for the New York Jets. He did come in relief last week against the Bills. He went 7 of 14, 33 yards and an interception. So yeah, wasn't super much of an improvement compared to Zach Wilson. Quite honestly, the person that threw the ball for the Jets that was the biggest improvement was our former punter, as Thomas Morstead went 1 for 1 in that game with a fake punt. But regardless, we're going to be seeing Tim Boyle as starting quarterback for the New York Jets. And if you look at what they might do offensively because of that, maybe not too much changes. It's not like they were lighting the world on fire with Zach Wilson, but you look at maybe a more fairly conservative game plan, especially against the defense we talked about. We're seemingly getting better each and every week. We're going to talk more about that defense here later in the video. But quite honestly, to put a bow on this one, it's gotten so bad for Zach Wilson that he's not even the second string quarterback on Friday against the Dolphins. That job belongs to Trevor Siemian. Zach Wilson has been demoted to third string. Real quick, before we jump into those top matchups, keys to victory, both Robert Hunt and Durham Smythe were DNPs for Tuesday practice. Now, Tuesday was actually a walkthrough, so any of the statuses from a Tuesday practice are more estimations as to what they would have been if it would have been a regular practice. So building on that, Devon Achane would have been limited in a Tuesday practice, which is actually probably a good sign, all things considered, re-injuring that leg last week against the Raiders. But even more heightened because on Tuesday, we learned that Salvon Ahmed landed on the injured reserve list for the Miami Dolphins as well. But the other bad news is that these offensive line injuries that we just cannot seem to shake ever continue to once again be an issue. All of the following guys were limited. I already talked about Robert Jones being a DNP. All these guys would have been limited. Teron Armstead with the knee, Lester Cotton with the hip, Robert Hunt with a hamstring, Austin Jackson with an oblique, and then obviously Isaiah Wynn still remains out. That's a lot of names. Obviously, Robert Hunt right now kind of feels like one that we would like to get back, but he also kind of feels like the biggest reach to get back on Friday. But like I said, we're talking about a high percentage of starting offensive linemen and backup offensive linemen that are on this injury report, which isn't great news, because we talk about the Jets, we dog them for their quarterback situation. But if there is a positive for this team, it is them on the defensive side of the ball. So we would like to be as healthy up front as humanly possible. Wrapping up the injury talk, Robbie Chosen actually was re-signed to the active roster because of the roster spot that was open from Salvon Ahmed being placed on IR. Let's talk about some of those matchups, some of those keys to victory. Now, this one kind of seems weird because we talked about how inept the Jets offense is, but quite honestly, don't let this be the week where the Jets offense, led by Tim Boyle, decides to wake up. It hasn't really happened yet this year. Don't let it happen this week, because it is a short week. It is a road game. It is a divisional game. You are turning to a new quarterback. Things can happen in this league. Don't let it happen this week, though. Stay on course. There's no room for a letdown. I've got a stat here that I believe I did the math on this, but I believe I did the math on this correctly. Last 46 offensive possessions for the Jets. 1 touchdown. They got 1 touchdown. It came last week against the Buffalo Bills in their last 46 possessions. Now, this is where it gets even taken to another level. The previous 3 touchdowns before this stretch of 46 possession, the previous 3 touchdowns came in the course one at a time. 1 in one game, 1 in the next game, 1 in the third game. 1 per game And the even crazier thing that keeps going on with this, they all came on one drive possessions. We're talking about a team that doesn't score. We're talking about a team that doesn't move the ball consistently enough to score. This is no consistency. This is no production. 9 touchdowns. The Jets have 9 touchdowns in 10 games. Remember when we played the Broncos? I mean, this was a little while ago now, but we had 10 touchdowns then. The Dolphins had more touchdowns in one game than the Jets have so far this season. So if we look at that Dolphins defense, 12th in total yards allowed per game, 10th in rushing yards allowed per game. The last 3 weeks, coincidentally, since Jalen Ramsey has officially joined the active roster, we gave up 13 to the Raiders, 6 of those points aided by the Dolphins offense. We gave up 14 to the Chiefs. We gave up 17 to the Patriots, 10 of them aided by the Dolphins offense. And we talk about Jalen Ramsey. I mean, those stats right there are all crazy. Jalen Ramsey is a huge part of that. 3 interceptions in 3 games played already leads the Dolphins in interceptions this year in 3 games played, but he changes everything. He gets to be freed up in the secondary. He lets Cater Kohu go back to just being that nickel cornerback. He's obviously made our edge rushers better. Bradley Chubb, 6 sacks. Jalen Phillips, 5.5. And I think we got Sealer, we got Wilkins, we got Andrew Van Ginkel that all have 4 or more. Like I said, I'm expecting the Jets to try to run the ball, make some safe passes. So maybe we're not in line for a bunch of turnovers on Friday, but don't get beat on the shot play like we did last week against the Raiders and Devontae Adams. Keep this game in front of you. Here's a matchup that I've got my eye on. Tyreek Hill, Sauce Gardner is going to have eyes this week, especially on the Friday nationally televised game. If you want to count Amazon Prime as nationally televised, we will for the sake of this video. But last year against the Jets, first matchup, Tyreek goes 7 catches, 47 yards, no touchdowns. Second matchup, 5 catches, 23 yards, no touchdowns. 2 of his worst games of the season. Now, there's a couple of things that go into that. This is not numbers just against Sauce Gardner. And secondly, that first matchup, that was when Bridgewater started the game and then got removed from the independent concussion protocols spotter, whatever the hell his title is. He got removed. Skyler had to finish it. And then the second game is the game that Skyler played the entire game. It was the last game of the season. We won an absolute thriller, 11-6. That put us into the playoffs. But man, you look at Tyreek this season. I mean, he was already awesome last season, but he's doing it again this year, but even at another level. First in the NFL, 1,222 receiving yards. That used to be a really good season in the NFL. First with 9 receiving touchdowns, first in yards after the catch, first in receptions that produce first downs, second in total receptions. He's currently on pace for 134 catches, 2,077 yards, and 15 touchdowns. When I was younger, I used to be pretty damn good in Madden. I don't even think I could have put that up in a Madden franchise. It's unbelievable. And you look at Sauce Gardner to wrap this one up. Sauce Gardner. Physical cornerback, some may say he's a little bit handsy, but quite honestly, he gets away with a lot of that kind of stuff. So if the refs aren't calling it, he's going to be physical. He's going to be grabby. So while I don't think this matchup is going to dictate the outcome of the game by any means, definitely an interesting one to watch. Let's talk about one more key to victory, because this might be a bounce back opportunity for our run game. There's some interesting nuggets in this one. So as we wrap this up, pay attention to these. The Jets defense is 11th in total yards allowed, 5th in passing yards allowed. Like I said, they're a pretty damn good defense, but they rank 30th in rushing yards allowed per game. Now, the Dolphins, on the other hand, rank 2nd in rushing yards per game offensively at 143. But what we've learned recently is that those numbers are being skewed a little bit, specifically because of that game against the Denver Broncos. We have got to go back 5 weeks before we hit an individual game where we hit our average of 143 rushing yards. Against Carolina, we put up 162 yards. The 4 games since then, we have averaged just 85 rushing yards per game. So yeah, the run game has definitely taken a step back recently, but there's probably a couple things that we can chalk that up to, whether it's Devon Achane being out since he's been on IR. He comes back, he goes out after what, 2-3 touches in that game. We've had numerous offensive line injuries, but regardless of what the issue is, this is a potential spot to get back on track. But that is what I've got for the first preview video. Like I said, questions that you may have for the final one between the Dolphins and Jets, go ahead, drop those in the comments. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. But that is my time for today, Dolphins fans. Until next time, fins up.